Good evening, everyone. I'd like to have you stand and join us for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Welcome. Happy summer, now that it's officially here. I'd like to report out on our closed session. Item A was conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency designated representatives were Micheline Miglis, Lucinda Abbott, and Darlene Avalos, and the employee organization was CAUSE. Information was exchanged, no action was taken. We're going to reconvene after this, and we'll report out after that as well. Item B was conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9B, number of cases 1. Information was exchanged, no action was taken. And then item C was public employee appointment, Government Code Section 54957. Title was administrative non-representative staff. Information was exchanged, no action was taken. So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes of regular meeting of June 14th, 2016.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then we'll move on to the agenda and consent agenda, and we are going to pull out for discussions items 3, 4, and 5. Out of consent, we're going to pull 3, 4, and 5 for further discussion.
I move we approve the agenda and consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Board Member Jacobson.
Aye.
Board Member Fabre.
Aye.
Board Member Schaefer.
Aye.
Board Member Banks.
Aye.
And I am aye. Formal.
You are very formal tonight.
It's like, what?
Wow.
I threw you off, huh?
Yeah. Oh my God.
You must have gotten some legal opinion. All right.
Crossing my T's.
Crossing our T's. Okay, so we're gonna. You can tell this is a summer meeting. I'm gonna come down to the podium and we're gonna recognize some people.
Do you want a photographer? I'll be the photographer.
Oh,
Okay, I'd like to, Nellie, can you come on up here? Thank you. Okay, these are, we have a number of people retiring this year. So Nellie Galvez has worked for the district for 23 years and most recently as an instructional aide at Summerlin, right? No. Oh, instructional assistant. No. Oh, no, I'm sorry. She's worked as an instructional assistant at Summerlin, a clerical support at Carpenter Middle School, and at Carpenter High School, and her current position is secretary at the high school. I'm sorry. I need to read my notes. And I know that I'm 23 years. That's tremendous, and I know you're going to be greatly missed.
Thank you.
So we have a plaque for you, and a nice. Yeah. Would you like to say a few words? No.
yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
It just has been fun.
Here we go.
We're gonna miss you. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
All right. Graciela. You didn't work at Summerlin.
Never.
Graciela Barnes has been with the district for 21 years, and she's been in the accounting department and is the heart of that department, I'll have to say. You are amazing with what the information you provide us and how organized you're able to keep all the sites. You're going to be greatly missed. I know we're all going to, miss you tremendously.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here's a plaque.
It's beautiful.
I'll give you a hug.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's
Would
been
you like, yeah,
yes,
please.
it's been a pleasure working for the school district almost 22 years. And it's funny to be here in the council chambers because my working career started here 40 years ago at City Hall in this building, and I have a lot of good memories of City Hall and also of Carpinteria Unified School District. Thank you.
Well, hopefully you're not going to be the last in your family to work for the
Well,
district.
I
I
wanted
know.
to point out, I have my family members here who are retired from the school district. My brother Jimmy, who was principal at Main School,
Yeah.
and Danny, who was carpenter, and yeah, they're here to support me and congratulate me.
Yeah. That's great.
All right, thank you. And Jimmy wants to know if he can say something.
Oh, most certainly. Yes.
I could say a few
Yeah,
words.
please do.
I'm Jim Campos, and I just wanted to say that with the retirement of Chelita Graciela, my sister, that puts an end to the compost line, which I think Sal was your bus
He was bus
driver.
driver.
He has told me that.
And mine.
He started in 1955. So that is a 61-year run of composters, which ends at the end of this month. And if we put all of the composters together, that would be myself for 35 years, my dad 34, my brother Dan for 22. Is that right, Danny? 23. Chelita for 21. Graciela. Mom for 22, 20, something like that. My wife for 6. Anyways, you put it all together, it's 136 or 7 years, something like that, total time.
Very
So you get to keep Reed, who's a part of the family, for a little while longer. I didn't want to miss that out.
He's a little part of the family for a while longer,
A little while longer
or the district.
for the district. Both. I don't know. Anyways, so the Campos family, thanks you very much. We owe a lot to the Carbon Unified School District. Thank you.
We thank the Compost family tremendously. I tell your dad that he's the first one to make me cry getting on a bus.
Okay.
You're on the wrong bus. Yeah. All right, Cindy. You have to come up here. You have to get out of your chair. Miss Lucinda Babbitt, who has provided us with, in my 5.5 years on the board, some of the most excruciating meetings have been ones that you've had. but they were
They were good
they
for
were
you, weren't
chock
they?
full of information. You basically led a doctoral class in school finance, and I think I'm a better board member for it. I think I'm a better citizen for it because I think I don't want to say I understand it because I don't think anybody understands it, but your grasp of school finance and the way you've been able to translate that into your spreadsheets has been really extremely helpful, and I know you've been dedicated and devoted to it, and your the honor you take, or the pride you take in providing such accurate information is great, and we're going to truly miss that, and your little exercises in the office and yoga and all this stuff. But we know you're going to enjoy yourself in retirement. I know. So here you are. This is, and
There it is.
sorry if I embarrassed you.
No, you didn't embarrass me at all. So Andy talked a lot about all of the budgets I've done and all of the counting, and it was certainly an important part of my job, but the things that I remember the most, the things that I learned the most from, are a couple of things I just wanted to share. And it's about the idea that really small things can turn into something really big because so many people get involved and work together on it. So the first one, we began when we were going through the very difficult and painful task of closing Maine School. And those of you who were here remember very clearly what a painful thing that was for the community. And in one of our interminable meetings, this woman came up and wanted to speak to everybody. And she was from First Five of Santa Barbara County. And she gets up and she says, you know, we really need to do more things for our small children in the community. And I have some really good ideas about how that can happen at Maine School. And just by that one visit really began the process that today is Carpinteria Children's Project, which serves children and families throughout the community and is a huge success. And it's because one person had this kind of small idea, really, you know, or it seemed small and simple, and it turned into this really great thing. So I loved that. And when I reflect on working here, I think about that. The other one, and I'll try to be really quick, because I'm sure I'm talking too much, and I have more talking to do when I do the budget, is a few years ago, I was really thinking about all of our facilities and you know, the kind of condition they were in. And I went to our superintendent at the time and I said, you know, what we really need is a facility master plan. We should be figuring out what it is we need to do and how much we think it's going to cost. And then we need to start figuring out how to do it. So it was just kind of a simple idea. And in fact, I had our supervisor of maintenance walk around all of our sites with the lined paper, and he'd just write lists in pencil. And that's how it started. And then it just snowballed. We started having all these ideas. We started talking to the community. We started talking to our staff. And the most amazing thing happened. We ended up passing a $90 million bond. And we are embarking on quite an adventure in modernizing our facilities. And again, it was just this little idea. I had no idea that it was ever going to turn out to be something like this. But it only happened because we all worked together. It wasn't me. And, you know, it wasn't just Michelle. We just had this one little tiny idea that everybody got behind and worked together and built upon it. And those are the things that I really liked best about being here, is that people can do that here in Carpinteria. Is that too much?
That was good. That was great. That was great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Mr. Roberto. Yes, sir. So Bob retired in 2007 and continued to work for the district, providing support to the superintendent in a variety of capacities, including being instrumental in student data analysis and acquisition of data analysis software systems such as the EADMS, ensuring district compliance of mandated state reporting, and the implementation of a system-wide English language development program. So that's almost as non-English as some of the acronyms you use in your presentations. Again, you've taught me a tremendous, and I think you've taught a lot of us the lingo of EduSpeak, and your presentations on in the statistics and the performance and the healthy kids and all the STAR testing was a great asset to us, and your contributions to this district are tremendous, and will live on for a long time, and we're going to truly miss your support and having you around, but I'm sure we're going to see you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So thanks, Bob.
I just want to take a couple of minutes to thank the board, and for the opportunity that they've given me to work in the district these 44 years. And it's ironic, I was thinking it was 44 years ago this month that I was hired. And on the board was Glenn Hickey, the father of our current board member. And so it's been a great time here in Carpinteria. I think Cindy indicated it's a small district, and that's primarily why I've stayed, because you can do things here. You can try things out. You can do things you can't do in a larger district. And so I'm grateful for the time I've spent here and the super number of opportunities from principal. It goes on and on. So I want to thank the board for the opportunity. And one of the things that has kept me and a lot of people here is the sense of community, because it is small, and we feel like a family in Carpinteria, not only the community, but I think within the district. And so I've appreciated that over the years. So thank you. And you won't have to listen to any more boring presentations.
They weren't boring. They were very informative. They were thought-provoking. There you go. Sue. Sue is another double retiree, I think. Sue Harrison has worked for 9 years in the district as support to the superintendent in a variety of capacities, including being instrumental in the pilot and adoption process of textbooks district-wide, ensuring district categorical program monitoring, compliance reports, and district-wide wellness. And I know you've provided a tremendous amount of information as well that has worked its way through us and helped affect a lot of the decisions we've made. So we'll truly miss you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, actually, I was just hired for 1 year to fill in while Bob was recovering, and 9 years later. But now, as someone who likes to keep busy, you'll see me around. I'm going to come and volunteer. I've already taken on one little project that I'll be doing next week. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Leslie. You're like our triumvirate here, the triple retirees, triple double retirees. So Leslie retired in 2009. However, she's continued to serve as the principal of the family school on a part-time basis, part-time, full-time, double-time basis. And I know you've poured your heart and soul into that, and it's a reflection of you as a person, I know, and it will continue to be a reflection of you as it continues on. And I know we're not going to miss you because we're going to see you all the time. So thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Andy. Well, when I first came here, I was sitting watching everybody get their little 10-year pins, and I said to myself, I'll never be here in 10 years. It's just, I never wanted to leave. It's a wonderful community, and I thank you all for the opportunity that I've had here and the wonderful children and families. And so you guys have my gratitude and my best wishes for the future, and I thank you.
Wait a minute. Oh, sorry. Wait, how's that better?
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Okay.
President Schaefer, can I say just a few words?
You have to add them up.
I don't have the exact number, but there's so many tonight. I'm going to keep my words brief. But I was looking, and I'm not sure of the exact number, but I think we're probably somewhere near 150 years of service here, which is really astounding. And of course, if you add in the entire Compost family over the years, we're way over
double
that. Yeah, it's truly amazing. And I just want to say on behalf of the board or on myself that how much we're going to miss you, how much you've been appreciated, all of your friendly faces. I had no idea until I looked at the dates tonight, Graciela and Nellie, that you were new when I was new. I didn't even know that. I thought you had been here a long time. That's how professional each of you were. So anyway, I've enjoyed watching each of you over the years, watching Leslie as she was a classroom teacher and then moved into a job as a principal. Bob, you were a principal and so many other things in our district. And, everyone in this district wears so many hats over the years, and I just thank you for your professionalism and what you have given to this district to make us grow and be better. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we'll move on to item 3, the proposed local control accountability plan. And Micheline has an update for us.
I do. Thank you so much. And in front of you, I left a very brief overview of our local control and accountability plan, also known as the LCAP. What we've been doing all year, as you well know, is we distilled the teen something goals into 4. And we received your support at a meeting earlier last month. This month, we continue to work on the actions. We spent time evaluating and providing an annual update. We received feedback from the Santa Barbara County Education Office as well. And what we have here for you this evening is the opportunity to hold a public comment period and also a proposed LCAP. There's nothing significantly or overwhelmingly different than what you had before. It might read a little bit different. As all districts, we become more and more comfortable with the LCAP and its purpose, moving beyond the compliance model into something that we really think we can implement and use. So essentially now we have 4 goals, and we've identified some of the high leveraging actions, and we want to be better at using the data to monitor meeting the goals and those measurements. So we feel that we have a document that's more reflective of where we are now. And honestly, I had very little to do with this LCAP. It's been all the principals who championed, as well as directors and executive cabinet members who championed one of the 14 or so goals before for the annual update. We have had a lot of help with Mari, Sue, and Bob, working very closely together, and you acknowledge their good work and their fine years of service here as well. Our Parent Advisory Committee also participated in this effort, and the union president also participated at one of the Parent Advisory Committee meetings, and so we also had his participation, which is ideally the way that the California Department of Education likes to see us work through this process. So we have an opportunity to respond to any questions or feedback so we can continue to work on this as we need to for tomorrow or at a future date if we need to continue to make any big changes for you.
I just have 2 comments.
Great.
First one is actually just for fun, because you said you didn't have much to do with this,
No.
but I definitely saw you in here when I read all English learners will be monitored by name, by need, by skill. So I knew you had something to do with it. Just had to mention that.
Well, thank you.
So-
Someone's heard me say that someplace, so.
My first question is, I loved reading this, first of all, and I loved seeing the Children's Collaborative being mentioned so often. And I just wanted to make sure, ask the question as we move into a different relationship, that's still going to be maintained. I realize this is, for this year and then reflecting 2 years out. So how is that going to work? Are we going to make sure we maintain that relationship, that they're able to then provide those services for the district?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to that. Well, so there's the logistical piece, which is through a memorandum of understanding where we would open up the permissions to exchange information. So assuming and presuming that all of that is in place, the relationship is not going to change because of who's paying the bills, for example. So we are committed. We certainly have, Maria and her wonderful staff in place and the team here to continue to build upon the relationship, because ultimately the students that are in the Children's Collaborative are our children as well. So for a healthier and more well community, a more vibrant and sustainable carpinteria, and certainly a literate and numerate student population. We have that commitment in place, and our behavior isn't going to change.
Glad to hear that. And then the only other question I had really deals with, at various points you read, access points will be monitored and initiative will be enforced. Can you explain what you mean by initiative? And I'm wondering about access points as well, what we're thinking about that, because I know there's been discussion about fencing, not fencing, all of those things. So I just wanted to be a little clearer on that.
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity as well. Can you direct me to the page specifically?
I'm on, right now, page 13 of 80. I believe
Okay.
it's mentioned a few times, but that's the one I'm on right now.
It's for every site.
Yeah, every site.
Great. So what we're essentially trying to convey there, and if we didn't do a good job, then please help us to make sure that we're expressing what we intend to express. Our goal is, with respect to safety, that all of our schools are safe for our parents, our visitors, our staff, and our students, and our faculty, of course. And so to monitor access points, in what we're trying to convey there is that we're going to make sure that our schools are not easily accessible by intruders. So if we haven't conveyed that properly, then certainly we want to do that. Sometimes it's just everyone on board monitoring as they walk through the hallways. It's getting children to understand which doors are accessible and which aren't, and posting signs, for example, and having district-wide signs that say the same thing. And when we post a sign that says visitors are required to check into the office, that then if that's our sign, then we are implementing what that sign says. So it's nothing in terms of a ginormous structural investment in terms of the LCAP. It's more about the behavior and all of us working together on that.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
I have one question. Do we have anything specific for foster youth?
Yes, in that our foster youth are part of our unduplicated count of our students. And in the concept now of the local control funding formula, all of our students now are included, and there's less accountability in terms of monitoring specific subgroups because of where we used to be with No Child Left Behind. But I would have to spend some time to look into this specifically on the page, Trustee Robertson, and if it's okay with you, I can check in with you either by tomorrow's meeting. And if not, then we will certainly address that.
I'm gonna kind of project that a good place for that would be with our pupil services administrator of by child, by need.
By name, by need, by skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
For pupil services.
But we should probably highlight that somewhere just because it is a targeted group.
Great.
That's a good point.
Good. I like homework. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to a public hearing that we will open and see if there's any comment in regard to the local control accountability plan. Seeing as there are none, we'll close the meeting and move on to the item 5, the presentation of the proposed 2016-17 budget. Our last one by Ms. Abbott.
Oh.
Okay. I know you're going to miss these. No, you're still going to have them. So, in preparing the adopted budget for 2016-17, there's some general considerations, and the first one I think is really important. It's a fluid document. This is our first estimate for our fiscal year, and many things will change during the year and be reported out to you at first and second interim. So right now, it reflects what we see our current staffing as being and our current activities and our programs for our students. And of course, there'll be other factors as well. The state budget was just signed by the governor, so that impacts our budget. Property taxes are our main source of revenue, and we will have a more refined estimate in late October. So that's a pretty big date for us. The level of federal funds, we budget based on 2015-16 balances, and so those will be determined over the next few months. Obviously, enrollment makes a difference in terms of our staffing. And finally, when we close our books in August, that will give us a better idea of what our real ending balances are. Right now, the adopted budget reflects the estimated ending balance moving forward into the year, and that can change. And as I just mentioned, the document itself in our SACS reporting shows 2 fiscal years. It shows 2015-16 estimated actuals and the adopted budget for 16-17. So it's a lot of paper. I was going to wave it at you, and then I realized I didn't bring it because you're actually adopting it tomorrow night. But it's about that thick. So one thing that I want to talk to you about, because this has an impact on the restricted side of our budget, is the changes in the Carpinteria Children's Project. So beginning January 1st of 2017, the Carpinteria Children's Project will operate as a separate nonprofit organization. And it will continue to operate the programs, the early childhood education programs, and all the services to families. But those activities will be done in the nonprofit organization. And as you all were just discussing, the district and Carpinteria Children's Project will continue to collaborate and deliver the services. I know in talking with Maria, one of the things we talk about is we want it to be seamless. We want it to look the same to everyone who's using it as it always has, but it's going to be a different structure. And because of that, our budget beginning in the second half of this coming year won't reflect any revenues or expenditures for the Carpinteria Children's Project on the restricted side. So it's important to understand that. And we have some things to figure out. So like, who gets the money? So in going through all of the funding for Carpinteria Children's Project, of course, most of that is coming from foundations. And most of the foundations have stated that they desire to deposit their money into the new exempt organization, CCP. So there won't be that much money coming into the district for CCP next year. So that's one thing we have to figure out. The CCP staff will continue to be on payroll as CUSD employees through December 31st. So we obviously reflect those salaries and benefits up through that time, but then those salaries and benefits will not be in the budget beginning in January. So I've been trying to think through what the process is going to look like, and it needs to be outlined in a more specific way in a memorandum of understanding between the two entities. But there's going to be a series of accounting being done because, first of all, CCP will have an estimated ending balance at the end of this fiscal year, 2015-16, of somewhere around $200,000. So they want to make sure that they use up that ending balance before they leave. So we'll be evaluating what that real ending balance is when the books are closed. Then we have the revenues and then the expenditures through December 31st. And we're going to have to figure out how CCP will be reimbursing the district for those expenditures, because it's clear that the expenditures will be greater than the revenues being deposited in the district accounts. So there will be a series of accounting and a final accounting after the end of December when all of the numbers are known. So it's going to be a project. So it's important to understand that in the budget that it's going to look a little different that way. And this is just an overview of the adopted budget. Let's see if I can make this thing not jiggle so much. I don't know about this. Okay. So you can see the estimated actuals for 2015-16, and you can see I really don't have control over this mouse.
Try this.
Thank you. It's messing with me on my last presentation. Well, I may get better. I've never used a mouse before. So the estimated actuals show 2015-16, the unrestricted fund with a net excess of revenues over expenditures of about $138,000, and then you can see laid out for 2016-17 adopted budget, and we're going to go into this in a lot more detail, but you can see here excess revenues over expenditures of about $28,000 in the unrestricted side, and an operating deficit of about $302,000 on the restricted side of the budget. So that's just a big picture view of what it looks like. And this is just a brief explanation of how we expect to end 2015-16. And you can see that at second interim we had a net increase in fund balance of $322,000, and we expect it to be $138,000 by the end of the fiscal year, which of course is a couple of days from now. And you can see that there are some changes in here. General descriptions, partly increases in certificated salaries due to higher use of substitutes, district instruction by hourly employees, and then a higher contribution to special education of about $61,000. So there's some changes that are occurring in this fiscal year since the second interim was prepared and presented to you in March. Okay, so the local control funding formula. I always feel it's important to talk about this formula, even though as basic aid we're not funded under it, because all of our neighbors are funded, and there's still a lot of rules that we have to follow. But in general, the local LCFF, I'm going to call it that because it takes too long to say it otherwise. The calculation is done periodically, and it's based on a target amount, which is in, I think it's 2020, 21. And it consists of three components. The base grant, which is the amounts that you get per student, and this is for all students. And then what's important for us to consider are the two additional types of funds that are added to the calculation: the supplemental grants, which are 20% of the base grant, and then concentration grants, where you get 50% of the base grant if your eligible students exceed 55%. And what's important about Carpinteria is that we have a lot of what we call unduplicated students who are our low income, economically disadvantaged English learners and foster youth. So we have about 68% of students in our district who qualify under this calculation. So if we were an LCFF district, we would be getting quite a lot of additional funding under this formula. And I'll get to why that's important in a second. So here you can just see a recap of what the calculation looks like for us. So on this side, you can see that the target is $20 million, And then there's this other calculation over here that shows how the state would give us additional funding to close the gap. So the gap is between the target and the amount that we would theoretically be getting in 2015-16 is 2.3 million. The gap rate is being closed by almost 55%. So the LCFF calculation is 19,570,000. So if we were an LCFF district, that's what we would be getting. So where this becomes important in our finances is we compare that number to our property taxes, and the estimate is 19,937,000. So you can see that right now we have, $370,000 more property taxes than LCFF funding, which is not very much.
Especially not if you consider that just a few years ago we were about $4 million over what the state was funding.
Yeah.
So as I'm thinking about that, I mean, that's really a clear picture of what is happening to us as most of the districts around us have been catching up, being given lots of money, and we're not getting that. And it's hard for us to maintain or compete, I guess is what I want to say at this moment.
And that's true. I mean, in 2015-16 was the best year ever for funding for LCFF districts, and the average increase in funding was 11%, and our property taxes increased by 5.5, which isn't bad.
No.
But when you compare it to 11% or some other districts that have a high number of unduplicated students, some of their increases were 18%. So it's a very different world. I do believe from everything I hear that this 2015-16 was the last really good year, and it's going to slow down. And in fact, the target LCFF for 2016-17 really didn't increase at all, at least in terms of COLA, because there's a zero COLA that's being provided to the state. So it's changing.
I'm personally really surprised to see that we're just basically $367,000 into basic aid, when years ago, just a few years ago, we were comfortably well into basic aid. It's really kind of eye-opening.
It is. And when I do the calculations moving forward into future years, assuming the level of property tax increases that I've used in the multi-year projections of 4%, you can see that we start to pull away a little bit.
The gap increases again.
But it's slow. We're not heavily into basic aid like a lot of our basic aid neighbors. So that's an important thing to remember, and this is why I take the time to show this calculation. And I probably already said all this. Yeah, I did. So I do expect we'll stay basic aid, but it's definitely not a bonanza. Now, the other thing about LCFF, of course, is the calculation for proportionality, which is done through the LCAP, which you've reviewed that document, where we demonstrate that our services that are provided to our unduplicated students are improved and increased over those that are provided to our other students. And so we have to demonstrate our proportionality. However, we're not getting more money for those unduplicated students because we are a basic aid district. So you can see here, I think I've already said all this too. In the calculation that's in the LCAP, the dollar amount for our estimated supplemental concentration grant is about $3.4 million, and that's demonstrated in that document. and the proportionality percentage is just over 17%.
Cindy, I have a question. So those concentration grant dollars, as the state budget kind of, it's kind of leveling off now. They're not giving these huge increases into education funding. Are they going to continue with the same level with concentration grants?
I think that what will happen, big picture, is that the whole target amount will not maybe increase as much. It increases based on the COLA. And then how much they fund for the gap is what's creating the increased funding. The mechanics of the calculation for the base grant and the supplemental and the concentration, I think, will stay the same. So we're still going to be looking at those large dollars for those students. It's going to shift a little bit, but
so you think that but that gap's not going to get funded anymore, is it?
well, theoretically the goal is that you're going to reach the target amount.
Yeah, but from what I've been hearing, that's not in the cards, right?
Well, I hear different things, but either way, let's assume, first of all, once districts reach the target amount, then revenues only increase by the amount of the COLA every year, unless they change the way they deliver the funding again. So at that point, it's not going to change very much. What's happening now is it's more because they're still trying to reach that gap, and up until now, the state has had the money to do that, and they've been reimbursing state districts for all the cuts that they had during the recession. So the state has had to pay back what they call the maintenance factor, and
Except for us.
well,
we're not getting that fair share.
We're not getting it, no.
Oh.
But at any rate, so yeah, I think that the mechanics will still exist. We're still going to have high dollar amounts of funds that we are supposed to demonstrate that we're providing these services to all these students. I don't think that's going to change, but it may not increase as much every year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anytime you want to look at my spreadsheet calculations, you're welcome to stop by. At least if it's in the next 2 days. Okay, so in the first part of the budget on the revenues, there's a category called LCFF sources, which I always find entertaining because, of course, we're not LCFF, but that's the category. And it includes a number of items, and you'll see them in your detail. You got a detail form 01 for the operating fund in your board packets, so you can see all these items as I'm going through the slides. So we get state aid. It's the amount that we're guaranteed from what remained of those categorical funds back before the recession. And so that's about $1.2 million. It stays the same every year. We don't get more, and hopefully we won't get less. We will no longer be receiving District of Choice funding because these were our, well, first of all, we only had 12th graders that we were receiving funding for, and also that legislation, unless it's extended, sunsets, and there won't be any funding anyway. But that's an open item. We don't know what's happening with that yet. And then the third item is the Education Protection Account, which came from Prop 30, and we're getting $200 per ADA on that, and that amounts to about $432,000. So that's in our budget. So all of these items are unrestricted. So then in the federal revenues, we participate in the Medi-Cal Administrative Activities Program, and sometimes we get money. This last year we got about $121,000. I don't budget it unless we get it. And because they switched methods on how districts are reporting it, we're not even really sure how much money we're getting. but it'll be a bonus if it happens. Other ongoing federal revenue, all the Title 1, 2, 3 will continue, and they're budgeted based on this year's 2015-16 numbers. We receive funding for special education, and we also have a grant where we have high school after school programs where we're getting about $200,000 a year. So other state revenues, we have revenue from a mandated cost block grant that we get every year that's based on a dollar amount per ADA, and that's estimated about $78,000. And then again, another one-time payment that reimburses us for our mandated cost, $214 per ADA. That's about $460,000. So we've had now 3 years of one-time payments from the state. And this 2015-16, we received about $1.1 million. So this has shrunk a lot. And everybody's saying this will be the last year for that. So we can't expect that to be ongoing. Lottery funds we get every year, unrestricted $140 per ADA, restricted $41. We also receive state money for special education programs, and that is funded through our SELPA, and it's allocated to districts based on countywide attendance. We receive funding for after-school programs, and that's budgeted at about $446,000. And we're getting a new grant, the Career Technical Education, which will be almost $133,000 for 2016-17, and then it drops to $66,000 for the next 2 years. So out of these funds, the special education, the after-school programs, and the state funds for the career tech are all reflected in the restricted side of the budget. And this is an interesting thing. I don't know if you remember this from when we got our audit, but we are now required to report the state's contribution to STRS.
Yes, I do remember that.
You do remember. It's weird. It's weird. So we budget revenues, and then we budget the same amount as STRS expenses. So this number will change. I'm just using the number that was in the audit, so they have a new number, but it's a wash. Okay, local revenues. Local revenues consist of interest income, rents, fees. We also are receiving about $25,000 in funding for our RLP program, and 2016-17 will be the last year for that, so that won't be ongoing anymore. And then on the restricted side of the budget, we have all kinds of miscellaneous things, contributions.
I have a question on that. So I think a lot of people probably, if we have anybody listening, so we're budgeting. Normally, you would think a contribution to a retirement would be just on your expenditure side, but we're required to put it on the revenue side, even though we don't actually see those revenues from the state.
That's correct.
So
because they're paying them on our behalf.
This is, but we don't. There's no money coming in. So normally you think of an a revenue as actual dollars from outside of your organization coming in, like new dollars. And I mean, that's how most organizations do math. and so the way the state has done this now is because they don't want districts to show this big unfunded liability, they're requiring us to record STRS contributions, which, by the way, this year is approximately a 3.2, 3.5% COLA which no one really puts it in that context, but it's about 3.5% COLA. So they're requiring us to put that into our budget as a revenue, so then we can turn around and take it out as an expenditure, so that it's a net zero. Am I understanding that?
I'm not sure. So, for many years, the state has made contributions to STRS on behalf of school districts. So the money's gone from the state. It was in the state budget, and that's where the real cash was. And so they would put the cash into the STRS fund.
That's if you were basic, or that's
That's
if
for
you were
everybody.
at ADA or a now LCFF district.
It was for everybody. So they've been doing this for a long time. I don't remember when this all started, but.
So local districts didn't contribute to the retirement.
Oh no, everybody. Okay, so contributions to the STRS fund come from about 3 different places. It comes from the state, and that's the part we're talking about. It comes from the employer, the districts, and that's the part that we reflect as an expense on our books because we're paying that, the employer contribution, and we talk about how much that is and how much that's going up. And then the third place it comes from is from the employees themselves. They have to contribute to STRS. So what I'm saying, and this is really a crazy thing, and it's new. This last year was the first year we had to do this, and it's more of an accounting convention to reflect the fact that these funds are actually being paid on behalf of our employees or on behalf of school districts to the pension fund.
But is this the $539,000, is that the state portion of the contribution?
Yes.
It is?
Yes, not ours.
It's not ours?
No.
Okay.
Okay?
So it's a pass-through.
Yes.
So,
Well, even calling it a pass-through is inaccurate because it never came or went.
Okay.
But it's an accounting convention. Sorry about that.
okay.
But we are required now to budget for it and then record journal entries when we close the books for that amount.
Okay.
Okay? So. Okay, so on the expenditures, wow. How did I say that? Negotiations have not completed for 2015-16. And what I did in the budget is show the effect of our last offer, which is 1% on schedule, 2% off schedule, in the assigned ending balances. So if you look in your packet, and you look at the multi-year projections, there's a calculation that shows how the dollar amounts of that is being included. So it's not, there's no salary increase reflected in the expenditure part of the budget. It's being set aside in the ending balance pending settlement of our negotiations. Does that make sense? So step movement on the salary schedules is all budgeted. We have higher rates for our contributions to our retirement plans, STRS and PERS. So for this next year, certificated contribution rates are 14.6 and classified 23.9. Health insurance premium increases average 3.75 for all plans. The premium for the Blue Cross PPO reflected in the budget is the $18,275. We have budgeted the cost of the math textbook adoption, which is for grades K through 12. The total cost of $274,000 allocated between restricted lottery funding, so that would be in the restricted side of the budget, and $128,000 to the unrestricted side of the budget. So that's in instructional materials, textbook adoptions. Overall spending for department supplies has been reduced by 15%. And this was something that we discussed at earlier board study sessions. Ongoing contracts for services were budgeted. We are required, because we have received state funding for our facilities, we are required to set aside 3% of our operating expenditures and transfers out. So that amount is budgeted at $770,732, and that number stays firm the whole year. Once you base it on, you calculate it on your adopted budget, it remains in the budget at that amount. Debt service for our buses, $50,395. And then the final part of the unrestricted fund, you'll see transfers in and out. And there's a transfer in from the special reserve funds of Fund 17 to the operating fund of $117,000. And I will emphasize that this is one-time transfer. When that money goes into the operating fund, there is no more money in the special reserve fund. So this is just a way to help fund our operations and pay for some of our non-recurring expenditures, such as textbook adoptions. We also have transfers out to the Child Development Fund, $16,000, Cafeteria Fund, $116,000, Deferred Maintenance, $100,000, and then there will be a transfer to Fund 63, which is our fee-based preschools operated by Carpinteria Children's Project. It's budgeted at $174,000. And this is coming from the CCP revenues on the restricted side of the budget. They're transferring their own money from foundations in to partly subsidize the early childhood education programs that are being operated. So once CCP becomes its own entity, we won't be seeing that sort of transfer anymore. Okay, so I'm going to try to flip through these slides pretty quickly. Here you can see general education. You can see our elementary schools, the teacher salaries, principals, benefits. You can see the full-time equivalent staff for next year compared to this year. In all of those cases, the staffing is projected to be unchanged. You can see the projected enrollments for next year, the enrollment for this year. Some small differences, but we're not anticipating significant changes there. Did I flip it? Darlene's giving me better information here. She helped me a lot with the slide. So she's saying that I've got these numbers backwards. So we're going to have, and that's right, because we added a teacher. We added another science teacher. That's exactly right. So that should be 29.4 for next year compared to 28.4. Thank you. Superintendent and board expenditure. So this is the superintendent's office. Human resources, our mighty department of one. The business department, you can see here, it's actually kind of small, so if you want to refer to your handout, you can see all the CBO salaries, staff salaries, benefits, the expenditures that are reported in the business department, and then the staffing levels at the bottom. I've always liked to show the FTEs in our office because an awful lot of work is done out of there by very few people, and so you can see that it's 6, right? I can't read it; it's too small. Thank you. So then we're going to have a new department this coming year with the hiring of our Director of Educational Services. So you can see here the costs associated with that, and I included, and I think this is going to get refined as we set up that department more, but what was included in the adopted budget were the salaries and benefits of the director, and then also our administrative coordinator. I put in the textbooks and some miscellaneous supplies. So I think that this department, with the new person involved, will probably include more items as that person, becomes responsible for different activities in the district.
Before you move on, can you explain the staffing, the 2 people at the bottom? I'm trying to be
Sure.
clear who that is.
So that's our new director, and it's Mari. Our new director and Mari, yes.
Okay, so we just have moved her in here.
I moved her in there.
So
yes.
she's not in the business department anymore.
No.
Okay.
Is that our new title?
That's
What's her
what her
current title?
title's always been.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and here's special education. So I laid out our revenues, and this is always, for me, a surprising slide because you can see that our revenues are about $533,000. We don't get a lot of funding for those programs. Our total expenditures are $2,586,000. So we have a shortfall of about 2.4. Total expenditures are 2.9. We have a total shortfall of about 2.4. So this number seems to grow every year. The revenues that we get to run the program seem to shrink. And you can see we're running lots of different types of programs. We have a summer school, extended school year. We have special day classes, full inclusion. We have resource specialists, speech teachers, psychologists, adaptive PE. And so we're providing a lot of services for those students. And you can see that our staffing over here with the director, psychologists, teachers, office staff, instructional assistants is 38.5 FTEs. So we have a lot of people working in that department to serve our students.
How many special ed students do we have?
The last number I saw was somewhere, and I don't know exactly how they're all measured, but we have to report that in our unaudited actual. So I think it's anyone who's receiving some type of service. I think it's somewhere around 200.
200 IEPs?
Not necessarily, but I think that was the number I have, and we could probably get you a breakdown
Well,
of.
if you're classified as special ed, you have to have an IEP with it, so. Yeah.
And in terms of doing the math, remember, we were technically over the state, and the state target is about 10-11%. And so if you took the total number of students in the district and looked at an 11-12%, we're just above the 10%. So I think it's a little bit over 200 students.
And this is our pupil services department, which is still undergoing some definition here.
It certainly blends with special ed. Like for the purposes of the PowerPoint, Cindy has GATE and pupil services, but GATE's actually been reporting to the director of special ed. So we're not going to get necessarily caught up in, the box that we've placed everyone in, because again, like Cindy says, we're teasing out those job descriptions together, and we'll have a more opportunity with our new director, Kristen Escobedo, as well.
So
Those services is more like a service, like a deliverable versus, a team of people.
right, and there's the key components of that are service. Obviously, there's services that are provided to students outside of special education. So we have our district instruction is being provided and charged by that department. Our screenings are charged to that department. So there's a lot of miscellaneous things that are in there. And we also have some portion of our psychologists charged to that department as well, to the extent that they are providing services to students who are not special ed students. So it's true. It's kind of a little bit of an unclear definition, and at some places it gets pretty blurry. Our transportation department. So we operate both home to school transportation and special education services, and we have a staff of just over 4 people, and their jobs are to drive the buses, and they also do warehouse, so they're split, and so their salaries and benefits are split between transportation and the next slide, which is warehouse. So you can see here that our entire transportation department is about $457,000. And there's the warehouse. So we have the equivalent of about half a person in there. So facilities administration and maintenance consists of a small portion of our director of facilities, about 10% of salary. Half of the supervisor is being charged to the maintenance, and half of the supervisor is being charged to custodial. So you'll see that position split, and that's a new thing this year. And then we have our maintenance staff and benefits. So it's this department where we're looking at whether we're meeting the 3% routine restricted maintenance expenditure requirement. So we're required to spend that on maintenance. If we don't spend it on maintenance during the year, it gets carried over to the next year. You can't use it in some other part of your budget. Here's our grounds department, 4 people. That's pretty self-explanatory, supervisor and 3 staff. Custodians, again, we have half of the supervisor charged here. We have a total of 9.69 FTE, so we have pieces of people working at all of our sites, including the Carpinteria Children's Project. And so that department is about $939,000. Technology department, this is also a really large department. They get a lot of work done. It's actually quite amazing with 2 people. And so their costs are a little over $309,000. And then I included a slide. All the other slides were related to what's in our general operating budget. This slide is related to Fund 13, which is our Child Nutrition and Wellness Fund, or all of our food services programs. And you can see here that the revenues are based on reimbursements for meals served plus sales of food. And then the staffing costs are in here. We have a new position that we're just now beginning the process of interviewing for the coordinator of food services, and all the salaries at the sites, at all the cafeterias, benefits, food. So the total expenditures for Fund 13 are about $1.2 million. So this is what's generating the transfer from the general fund that you saw earlier of $116,000 to cover those costs. And of course, we've talked a lot about food services over the year, and with a new person on board, they will be taking a look at all of the staffing and purchasing. So this slide shows our contributions to restricted funds. You can see routine restricted maintenance, special education, I already talked about that. So overall, our contributions add up to almost $3.2 million being transferred from the unrestricted to the restricted budget. And then, because I'm supposed to, I put in a slide showing the expenditures and how we spend the $200 per ADA for our education protection account. And so we budget in there the cost of our counselors and our music teachers. Okay, so you also received in your packet multi-year projections. So to start with, we have to build our projections based on certain assumptions. So one of the most important assumptions is what property tax increase should we be using. So the property tax increase for the next 2 years for the multi-year projections, the assumption is that it's 4%. The 2016-17 property taxes are estimated to increase by 4.2. So that's somewhere in the ballpark of the same level of increases. We continue to be basic aid. When you look at 2017-18, the one-time payment for the mandated costs is being deducted because we don't expect future funding. And we won't be receiving the RLP funding from the county office, and we've already talked about that. Otherwise, revenues remain at the same level. On the expense side, for 2017-18, I assume that we would have 3 retirements of certificated staff, and they would be replaced by 3 staff people at a lower cost with a net savings of $115,000. The projections include step increases for any staff eligible for that. That's both certificated and classified. No cost of living increases for included in the multi-year projections. But again, I included the cumulative effect of our offer in the assigned ending balances. So every year it would be included in the assigned ending balance being set aside until we get to a point where we have a settlement, and then obviously it goes on the salary schedules and will be included in the expenditure budgets. But for right now, this is a way to show that we're setting aside those funds. So with a 1%, you're going to see a 1% increase in those amounts for the salaries being added to that assigned balance. And so for 2017-18, it's $652,000. Retirement contributions, again, increase 14.4, 15.5 per STRS and PERS. Health insurance increases, again, assumption of 6% increase in premiums. And based on the agreement that we made with our staff in 2015-16, the district pays half of the increase, and then employees pay the other half, with that amount being placed on the salary schedule. So I just show that in the multi-year projection that way based on that agreement. And then other expenses, supplies, books, operating expenses increased by 2.3%. So what you can see here is this is an abbreviated version of the spreadsheet that you have in your packet. And you can see that for 2016-17, we have excess of revenues of $28,000. When you go into 2017-18, that becomes an operating deficit of $435,000, because of the higher staff expenses and then lower revenues because we're not receiving that additional state funding. And then here at the bottom, you can see the reserve percentages. You can see the minimum 3% reserve calculated on these lines here, and then the difference between the total reserves in the highlighted area. And you can see the reserve balance calculated is 7.94 right now in 2016-17 and 5.71% in 2017-18. And again, the last proposal from the district of the salary increases is included in this reserved assigned balance here. So it is in effect taking out an amount from the fund balance when we're calculating the reserve percentages. Does that all make sense? It's a pretty unusual way of doing it, but Ron Bennett said that was the way to do it. So. And so here's what the multi-year projections look like, contributions to restricted funds. And so you can see the different programs that we have where we require contributions. And we've talked about those already, our special education program, routine restricted maintenance. So these are the numbers that are used in all 3 of the years. The adopted budget here, and then the multi-year projections for the next 2 years. So that's just how I came up with those numbers. Then for the final year of the projections, again, property taxes increased by 4%. 3 retirements for certificated staff in that year. Step increases for staff. No cost of living increases. This is pretty much the same type of assumptions that were in 2017-18. And then the cumulative effect of the district's last offer of $783,000 in the assigned ending balances. Higher contributions to the retirement plans. STRS is 16.3%, PERS is 17.1%. Another 6% increase in health insurance with the same allocation to between the district and the employees. And then books and operating expenses increased by 2.5%. And this is what this looks like. So we have 2017-18 operating deficit of $435,000, and then an operating deficit of $326,000 in 2018-19. So our reserves go from 5.71 in 17-18 to just over 3% in 2018-19. So what's important to think about here is when we submit our budgets to the county office for approval, they're looking at 2016-17 and the subsequent 2 years. So that's why I show 3 years. And they're looking to see that we have reserves of at least 3% for all of those years, including the last year out, which is 18-19. So you can see that we meet that reserve, but just barely, under our proposal. And then this is just a quick summary of all of our other, all of our other funds. You've seen Fund 01, Child Development Fund, which is our state preschool program. I didn't talk too much about that, but Carpinteria Children's Project has been operating that program. And what I think we will be doing is we need to keep the contract with the state. They won't let us transfer it to CCP. So we will keep the contract, and then we'll need to subcontract with CCP to operate that program. So this is sort of an interesting budget because it has staff expenditures for the first half of the year, and then there's this big expenditure called services down in that budget because that's the estimated amount for the subcontract for the remaining part of the year. And we already talked about Fund 13. Deferred maintenance, you can see the budget amounts in here with the transfer in. Right now, I just have budgeted the projects we know we're doing, which are our slurry projects, but there will likely be other significant repairs that will occur during the year as well. Special reserve fund, there's the $117,000 going out. Funds 21 and 22 are our building funds, and 22 is the fund that we use to account for all of our Measure U monies. So what you'll see here is not too much revenue. That's just the income, the interest income from the $20 million that was deposited in the county treasury. And what you'll see in expenditures right now is about $2.3 million. And those are the salary and benefits of the staff working on those projects and the known projects, which are mainly our summer projects. So you'll see a lot going on.
Everything we've contracted for so far.
Everything we've contracted for, exactly. So I would expect over this next year that the expenditures in this fund will become quite a bit higher, but I only budgeted in what we had actually contracted for. And then here's Fund 25, our capital facilities, our developer fee fund. And funds 51, 55, which is where where the county collects the assessments on the property taxes to pay off the bond debt and makes the principal and interest payments on the bonds. So they're paying off bonds from our previous 1995 bond election and now for the 2014 bond election. Fund 63, the preschool program. Again, this will look a little different because it only reflects 6 months of activities. And our self-insurance fund is where we deposit the health insurance being charged through payroll. So it's kind of an in and out thing. So it's being charged through payroll over 10 months, and then it gets paid to CISC over 12 months. And so you'll see that money going out every month. And I think that's it. I know.
I just want to comment, I really, really like that you broke it out by department. That was great.
Thanks, Cindy. That was excellent as usual. I think you can attribute the lack of questions to how well educated we have become.
Or are you just stunned?
Well, we're still stunned too, but it's
We have a budget session tomorrow,
yeah,
right, where we can talk about the details.
we have another meeting tomorrow where we're going to be talking. We're going to basically be approving this.
Okay. And then we could just have more questions.
No, turn your mic on.
Oh, thank you. Where we can have more questions while we have time to absorb.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Thank
Could
you.
I say one thing?
Yes, you may.
Really, I just want to say, Cindy, thank you, because that's your last presentation to us, and I've always appreciated how easy you have made something that is really, really complex seem. You break it down very, very nicely, and I appreciate that. So I just want to thank you for all your years, and say I'm going to miss you.
Okay, so we will now open a hearing for the 16-17 budget for the Carbon Unified School District. Open it to public comment. Seeing as there's none, we'll close the hearing. Oh, we have a public comment. Sorry. Yes, you may.
Hello, my name is Jack Jugla. I just graduated from Carpi. May have seen me there. And I've been a student of this district for 13 years. I have some experience here. I've seen some of the best teachers I have ever had leave this district because of the budget, because they were either handed pink slips or because they couldn't make ends meet in this town. My argument is based on experience and the only facts that I can present are what I've seen happen during my time here. Before coming to Carpenter High School, I knew I could find an exceptional education here because of the reputations of teachers like Mr. Lindsay, Mrs. Unruh, Mr. Roberts, and many others. I had heard other students speak so highly of them that I knew I was going to be in good hands. The other factors that had given Carpentry High School a mixed reputation didn't matter to me. I knew that the teachers were what made this school special. Now many of those teachers I mentioned are retiring or are coming close to retiring. I truly worry about how the district will be able to replace them when nearly every new teacher that I've seen come to the schools in Carpinteria has left. Each year that I've been at the high school, there's been a brand new math teacher replacing one who found better working conditions elsewhere. 2 of my freshman year teachers left for better pay. This has consistently been an issue. This district is not a business. The only profit that needs to be shown to anyone is the quality of education given to our students, and I know you all know this. The money given to this district by our state and our town was not intended to be kept in an account as a reserve. It was allocated for the education of our students. A disproportionate reserve, greater than is required by the state, in my opinion, is keeping funds directly from improving the education of our students. I know that everyone wants to help our students, and everyone has a different opinion on how to do that. Ignoring my opinion and just looking at what has happened, new teachers almost always cannot manage to stay in this district. The only way that I can see to combat this, to find quality teachers who can commit to our community, is to show that we value our teachers, not by cutting benefits and letting their salaries stagnate. That's
Thanks,
all.
Jack. I'd just like to I'm not going to respond to you directly, but I would be happy to sit down with you anytime and go over our budget.
I'm sorry. Please finish your comment.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that and explain to you, kind of go through the actual numbers, so that you could make up your own mind.
Just going through this budget, I definitely have a little bit. I mean, I've only been sitting here for an hour. That was incredibly complex, and I have no experience with this. But really, at the end of the day, being a student in a classroom, the person that has the biggest effect on your education is the teacher that's giving you instruction.
That's true. I don't think one of us argues with that or has any issue with that. It's just that our teachers in this district, along with administration, made a conscious decision a number of years ago to put a higher value on their health insurance than on salary, and so there's only so much money that comes in as revenue, and that money has to be allocated different ways, and so as we have basically committed to paying 100% of health insurance benefits, those costs have increased tremendously. They've gone when Terry started, they were probably at $4,000 or $5,000 per teacher, and today they're close to $19,000 per employee. And every year they increase approximately an equivalent of about 1 to 1.25% COLA, which would be 1 to 1.25% of a salary increase. And then when you add that to the pension contributions that the districts are now asked to increase our contributions, they amount to about another 1% COLA every year for the next over a 7-year period. The district is required to contribute an additional equivalent of what would amount to 1% COLA. So with no new revenues, that's the big problem.
I mean, of course, it all comes down to the budget and the minutia that I have no depth of understanding at all.
Yeah.
But all I can offer is what I've seen as a student, and that has been teachers leaving, and it's gonna come back to bite us if it.
Well, that's true.
And their reputation is
you
gonna
may
build.
see that, but also we will be so what the district administration is faced with is it because we only have so much money. So do we increase our class sizes, which makes the quality of that education maybe less, maybe not, but it definitely impacts the students all across the board, from the elementary schools at kindergarten, where it's really important to have reduced class sizes, and to the high school, where maybe we aren't able to offer some of the classes that we offer now because we only have so much money. And so those are decisions that we have to make, and it's really difficult, and we don't do it lightly. It's very heart-wrenching at times, and because we know ultimately it impacts you, the student, and that's really what we're up here for. That's why we are all sitting here doing this job, is because we want to provide the best education possible with the resources we have, so that you can go on and become, great citizens, and then give back and contribute to society. So it's not like we're consciously saying we don't want to pay our teachers more. It's just we have so much money.
You're restricted, I understand.
Well, and they're allocating certain ways, but when you add up total compensation, if you add up total compensation, including salary and benefits, health insurance benefits, well, everybody has retirement, but if you include salary and our health insurance, we are very competitive with surrounding districts. For instance, in Santa Barbara, teachers get somewhere around $600, $700 a month towards their health insurance. If they want to buy the district health insurance policy, they have to contribute another $1,000 to $1,200 out of their salary, and so our teachers don't have to do that, and which is great, but people have to make a conscious decision. Our salary schedule starts low, but it actually is not that much lower when they get to the higher levels. So it's a really difficult. It's difficult for us.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's very difficult for us. I really appreciate you coming out tonight and speaking. Shows a lot of fortitude, and like to, I'd be happy to sit down and talk to you about this. And I offered it to another student as well, who spoke similarly to how you just spoken. So if you would like to, please contact either Mr. Cornejo or Ms. Miglis, and anytime I'd be happy to sit down with you.
Yeah, and I am very not inspired. What's the word I'm looking for? I see already that our district is moving in a new direction under our new superintendent, and I do believe that we're moving in the right direction. I mean, I don't have the experience to stand here and give you a articulated message. All I can really give you is my impression as being a student of this district.
And that's great. I would encourage.
I just thank you for listening to me.
Yeah.
I in no way. I want to emphasize, I am not well versed in.
No. You're impressive.
Yeah, you're
Jack.
doing a great job.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job. But I would just in anything that you ever endeavor, it's really good to get both sides of an issue, and not just listen to one, because a lot of times that'll take you down a path that if you haven't thought it out or gotten all the information, it's a dead end. So I would just encourage you to not just this, because it's your choice whether you want to look into it further, because it is very tedious. But just in any endeavor you go into in life, make sure you get as much information as you can, because that's only going to make you smarter and more informed.
I will.
All right.
Thank you.
Before you walk away, Jack, I want to give you this packet, okay?
Yeah, the
So
entire
you can.
budget,
But I actually just want you to take time to focus. You can focus on the whole thing, but take it and look at these pages with the budget. And I made a couple notes and circled a couple things, and I just want you to just look at that and think about it yourself.
I will.
Because I know you're a smart guy. I listened to you for scholarships.
Thank you very much.
You take
Thank
care.
you. you're proof in the pudding why we're doing this, Jack. Yeah, so. Okay, so now that we've heard public comment, I would like to close the hearing, and we will move on to item 7, the approval of the educator effectiveness plan. Or the hearing of it.
I'm going to move for approval of the educator effectiveness plan.
Thank you.
Second?
Any discussion?
No, good proposals
All
here.
right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our superintendent's report.
I think our staff is ready for school to start. Seems that it goes easier and or to some extent less tedious when the kids are here. We've been very, very busy with all of the end of the year requirements and the deadlines, and thank you for all of your support with the various plans and public hearings and the documents. I did want to just share with the LCAP, you may have noticed that at your area there, you saw an overview, and this will reflect the LCAP when it's approved. This is a preliminary overview, and we've just attempted to really synthesize it, and so this is going to be a lot handy, a lot easier for folks. As we work with our families, we'll translate it into Spanish as well. Again, it's just been, in progress. And I want to thank Mari for putting this together, because I showed her an example of what I had a vision of, and I returned from my Leadership Institute, and it was there. So thanks to Mari for all her help, too.
All right. So no public comment, Jolene? Additional? All right. Okay, we'll move on to H, business operations, facilities, and warrants.
I move we approve and ratify the warrants for June 9th through June 16, 2016 as presented.
Can I get a second?
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, move on to item 2, an approval of a contract for exterior paint upgrades at Maine.
I move we approve the lowest responsible for exterior painting upgrades at Maine. The awarded contract amount will be paid from Maine site funds.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Just
Oh,
a quick question. I'm so shocked at how wide these bids were. Any reasoning for that? I mean, it's truly unbelievable. I mean, for the public, I just want to say that the lowest bid is just over $250,000, and the highest was $1.1 million. I don't understand it.
So, well, neither did David Winiger. That's
we
quite
budgeted, what did we
surprising.
budget in there? We budgeted like 3.
We thought it would run somewhere close to 350,000. And so the first question becomes, are these people going to do a good job
Know
for
what
the
they're
the low bid? And David and Robert Robles, our architect, met with the contractor, and they felt more confident after that. They've done a lot of contract work down at Camp Pendleton. And I don't think you mess around with the Marines when you're doing work. So they feel like they will do a good job, and we have a project manager that we are using on other projects, and he will also be responsible for very closely watching all of the paint activities. So.
Okay.
We're hoping that this is going to work
it's
out.
just pretty shocking.
It-
I mean, the
it was very
1.1 was obviously really out of the ballpark, because then there were 2 that were in the 400,000.
Do you recall what our disabled veteran percentage requirement was for the contract? 5 or 10%?
I didn't. I mean, I don't know. I didn't look at that.
I'm guessing
part
they
of the
met
contract
they
that
met the
closely.
requirement themselves, so that means they'd have one less
They would have to
subcontractor.
meet it. But you're welcome to look at the contract in the.
I'm
Oh.
trusting you, and I wasn't. I was just really kind of just amazed. for it to be that far apart. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were and what the discussion was. And I did, of course, hope that I know we have to go with the lowest, what's the term I'm looking for?
Lowest
Responsible bid. So I'm not questioning that the homework hasn't been done, that they will do a good job or not, but I just was really surprised by that. That's a huge variance.
I've never seen it
Yeah.
in any of the
Either, I don't think.
projects that we've done. And in fact, when it came in, we were thinking of putting it on the last board agenda, and I said, "Oh no, let's wait and figure this out a little bit." So
I'll be happy if they,
Well,
obviously
it'll
we'll be paying attention, but I'll be happy.
It'll be wonderful to have the building painted. It's in pretty bad shape.
Very good. That's really
Lavender, right? We're painting it lavender. Is that right, Maria? Yeah.
I second that.
All right. The lavender?
Yeah.
Match my phone.
All right. Okay. All in favor of approving this contract for painting at Main School for the lowest responsible bidder?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So do we want to talk about
Yeah.
those items that we pulled out of the consent
Sure.
here? So we had item
D3, 4, and 5.
D3, which was a contract renewal with Northwest Evaluation Association for measure of academic progress for the 4 elementary schools. And I think you had some
Yeah,
questions.
so my questions are kind of in relation to item D13, which is, I believe that's the right one, let me see, yeah. That the continued data management system, DataWise, that the district adopted a few years back. I think I was still an employee when DataWise was chosen. So my question with D3 is, why are we purchasing a secondary data system instead of using the district adopted one?
It's my understanding that as part of the mathematics adoption process, that there was interest in utilizing this feature that is not necessarily available in the other programs. Truthfully, did not participate in those meetings. However, I did receive feedback, and I received the notes from Christy Guerrero, who facilitated the primary grades meetings. So what we're trying to do is figure out the best system to use and to narrow it down. And I think because we have not had a district-wide meeting, that there's interest at some sites to continue using an alternative program, not in lieu of the EDMS, which is the DataWise, but in addition to. And in thinking about our LCAP and responding to this in a very holistic way, with the advent of welcoming in the Director of Educational Services and noting in the LCAP that we will be calling for a curriculum council district-wide, I really think that if there are any questions about this, it would make sense to take it to the curriculum council and have a very orchestrated, facilitated process there, so that those representatives are working with their site teams as well. And then we really do, though, need to commit district-wide to a measurement system, use it faithfully, monitor it regularly, come forth and report here on those assessments that we've selected as those common assessments, and that practice and that muscle becomes stronger and stronger, and that it be a K-12 process and not simply one middle or the high school. So I know that that's not exactly responding to the details of the question.
It actually is, because it was my concern too that we were going to start to have multiple data systems again, that they weren't going to be aligned across the district. Everyone was going to have different, measurements, and that's what my concern was. So my thought is that we hold off on this until the new Director of Ed Services has come up with an eval plan to align with, the new curriculum, and stay true to the, what'd you call it?
EDMS. The EDMS
Okay, EDMS.
with the DataWise. And in fact, maybe that's not where we end up anyway. Perhaps we remain there, perhaps it's something else.
But that it is a district-wide data system. And Renaissance Learning also, produces some great data reports, and so everyone's going to have access to that. That's uniform. So the more uniform, the better. Which kind of leads me to the D4, and it's they're asking to just have Dreambox for Catalino.
Well, and let me also just speak to the other contracts. Some of the schools,
It's got it
No, it has
No,
other stuff.
Dreambox was faithfully used at the family school as well. So what we were trying to do here overall was we were trying to capture it in the district-wide lens prior each site was purchasing the licenses. And so that was not consistent across the board. So in attempt, Trustee Robertson, we actually were trying to systemize this a little bit more. And certainly there's value in a curriculum council addressing this.
So doesn't Dreambox also generate a report?
These systems generate reports, and we're not certain that they're aligned with Common Core and aligned with the goals that we have per se in the district based on the assessment of the CASP and where we are, where we need to shore up.
Well, I thought Dreambox, that was the whole reason we subscribed to it, was because it was aligned with Common Core. That was,
I can't say for sure. I would have to defer to principals with that respect. I don't know Dreambox enough to be able to support that assertion, or if that's what they proclaimed when it was adopted, then I'm in error.
Would there be a problem with tabling this until our next meeting and getting that information on these programs?
I think I would be happy to provide that. I think there's value added in also spending a little bit more time when folks are really here. I don't like to work in isolation, and there's some teacher input I would appreciate with respect to this as well. So perhaps we can table it knowing that we do have the EDMs in the meantime, the assessments from our newly adopted mathematics. Our language arts teachers are actually piloting with free materials or almost free materials through the process. So I think we should actually be okay. There's just urgency to make sure that whatever we adopt is what we implement district-wide.
So I see the Dreambox runs out the end of this month. So my children will be very happy that they don't have to do Dreambox in the summer.
I don't know that everybody would.
is that?
Casey will be very happy that she doesn't have to do Dreambox in the summer.
Yes.
Well, but I guess that is part of my question is what are the impacts if we don't approve this tonight?
Well, there's always the possibility of the negotiating superintendent to get on the phone and extend, contracts for a month too. I just didn't think about doing that.
Yeah, I think we could table it.
Yeah, I think so too then.
In the meantime, I'll provide you with an update electronically as the information becomes available sooner.
Okay.
Thanks.
So just a quick question, since we didn't address D5,
Yeah.
are we tabling all three of those?
Well, it just seems like another
Yeah, it's
online
another.
data platform.
Right,
Yeah.
we just hadn't talked about it, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we're doing here.
I see them all kind of the same.
Okay.
I'd like to see justification why we need three different, basically tools for measuring math progress.
You would like to see different tools for
No,
measuring?
I would like to see
Why do we have
justification for
Or
the
different?
need for three different tools when we're trying to basically align everything. I think there's such a thing as having too much data.
And I would like to defer to the teachers and how they're using it
that's
best,
fine.
so
I think what we're
definitely.
saying
Yes.
is we'd like to table this as well.
Understood. Let me see what kind of work I can accomplish from now until July 12th. And in the meantime, remain in correspondence with you. And again, I think there are opportunities, while a subscription might expire, these companies like to keep our business. So if they're anxious and wanting us to continue to work with them, I'm sure we can meet someplace in the middle for a gap coverage, yeah.
I'm comfortable with tabling it.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll move on to I, Measure U, and we have a contract for ADA improvements at the high school.
High school.
So is this for all the walkways at the school, or just, do you know?
It's not for all of them. I'm trying to remember which wings it is. Let me see if I could tell. So they were already getting set up. So
Okay.
let's see, what was that?
I think it's
Let me see if I can tell.
culinary
I
arts and
wanted to
everything.
say G wing, but I just
That's
I'm
what I
not-
wanna say.
I'm just not.
Do you recall what we
certain.
budgeted for this, Cindy?
Well, the contract.
I know what the
it was-
contract is.
Well, the cost estimate came in somewhere around that. I don't remember
Okay,
the
all right.
exact number, but it was within the range of that. And I don't know that we do have it. But I want to tell you, it's like the G wings. But it's certainly
That's
not.
what I
the-
think too, but I'm not.
It's certainly not the
sure.
entire campus. They're doing it in sections.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So I'm going to move for approval of the contract for the ADA improvements of the walkways at Carpenter High School and award the contract to Shaw Contracting.
Second?
Two quick questions.
Yes.
Did we only have one bid? That's what it looked like. Is that Jeff Shaw, local? Carpenter High School graduate? That's
Jeff
great.
and Bob.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I thought it was. I just wanted to make sure I was thinking correctly. Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, move on to item J, personnel. Being asked to review the staffing options for TK through grade 5 for 16-17 school year.
So in front of you, you have some information that was provided to you. The projected enrollment has increased in TK and kindergarten due to the passage of the AB 104 and the amendment to the Ed Code, which became effective on July 1st, 2015, which basically states that any child that is going to turn 5 within the school year would be allowed to enter TK with some stipulations that are on the Ed Code. So we have provided you 3 options for staffing. The first option is to remain status quo with the reorganization of classes, and that is your scenario 1 in your packet. You all have this packet.
Mm-hmm.
Must. I would have done with it. Yeah.
So scenario 1 indicates that the FTEs at Aliso would remain the same. They would have 16 FTEs for the 16-17 school year. They'd have 2 combination classes, which is grades 1 and 2 and 4 and 5. For Catalino, they would remain the same FTEs at 23. They would have 2 TK classes and a combination 1, 2, and 4, 5. So that's where the reorganization of the classes are, with remaining status quo with our FTEs across the board. Option 2, which is scenario 2 that's in front of you, is adding an additional FTE to Catalino, which would be the second TK class there. Maintaining 4 Ks, 4 first grade, 4 second, 3 third, and a combination class of 4 5. Aliso would still remain as 16 FTEs with 2 combination classes, 1 of grade 1, 2, and 1 of 4 5. The third option is all students would be assigned to their home school. All requests for inter-district transfers would be denied, which may also result in additional combination classes.
Does option 3 include an additional FTE?
No. It would just probably, it would shuffle the students to their home schools, but that would probably result in more combination classes than those shown on scenario 1 and 2.
And is option 4, we do not take those expanded TKers?
But we could do that, yes.
Okay.
So, and in addition to your packet, the first 2 pages note the incoming TK students. The ones in blue highlight are those that fall under the new amendment of the Ed Code.
I get it.
So there are 7 that fall under the Ed Code for Aliso, and there are 20 that fall under the Ed Code. These have already been included in the projected enrollment numbers that you see. So they're not in addition to, they've already been accounted for in the scenarios.
The blues are.
But, so this is where I'm confused. I still don't understand when we expanded to, so you have 7 students now that are outside the original, okay, let me back up. 7 students at Aliso and 18 students at Catalino who are outside the original policy, board policy for TK. So how did we end up with 25 extra students? And where I'm going with this is I'm very concerned that next year we could have 100 or 150 TKers.
I'll let our superintendent address that question.
Initially, as parents came forward, we examined the students kid by kid or each individual one because of the change in the Ed Code. And so we did not adhere to the existing board policy at that time. We looked at them as early admittance, as is provided as an option for a school district. And then we started to examine the new Ed Code, and we had meetings about this. Maria participated with us because of her expertise and being on the cutting edge of the information, much more so than we were. And before we knew it, we ended up with this potential of having another class, and that's why we came here to seek direction and approval from you with respect to what that would look like with adding an FTE or not. And so it was not in any malintent, it was just responding to the interest and the needs out there, and before we knew it, we were here looking at these numbers.
I understand that, but I think before we know it, we're going to have 4 more classes, or 5 more, or 6 more. So it may not happen next year, but it's the year after. And we're struggling with our budget right now. And knowing that we need to make some cuts for next year to eradicate our structural deficit, we already know we're facing that issue. So, I mean, personally, I just can't see adding this right now, as much as I love preschool, as much as I
mean, we're going to be
think it
cutting
benefits.
we'll be cutting
Yeah.
something else next year.
Yeah, so I just had a question of clarification. So we are not in violation of the Ed Code as we are currently, correct?
No, our board policy does not align with what the amendment is because it's based on local discretion.
Right, but so we're not in violation, correct?
No.
Yeah, I mean,
And would not be if we
and would
didn't
not
expand.
be if
Well,
we didn't
well,
expand, right?
I'll just read it for the public. So the amended California Department of Education policy states, pursuant to AB 104 EC 4800 C3BI, a school district or charter school may, at any time during a school year, including at the beginning of the school year, admit a child to a TK program who will have his or her 5th birthday after December 2nd, but during that same school year, with approval of parent or guardian, if, that's a big if, the governing board of the school district or the governing board of the charter school determines that the admittance is in the best interest of the child and the parent or the guardian is given information regarding the advantages or disadvantages and any other explanatory information about the effect of his early admittance. So, but they don't get ADA for that student until they attain the age of 5.
And we never would.
And we will never get that ADA. And I agree with you, Terry, that, because we're in a structural deficit, and I can easily see that increasing to 100 or more students. And we'll have a whole additional
A whole
class.
We will.
Whole grade
I
level.
believe we will.
100 and, what are we running now? 150,
150,
170?
160 maybe, I'm not sure. It could be smaller, it
Grade
could be
level.
a little smaller, a little bigger, but
So I am in favor of option 4.
me too.
So just for my clarification, can you repeat what option 4 is, since that is
That
in
we, that we,
addition
that
to-
we abide by, well, I think.
We are not going to offer expanded
Expanded
slots
TK based on the
beyond
amended
our board policy, which is September 1st to December
second.
2nd.
So the one problem we have now is we don't have any scenario that shows us how that works as far as staffing.
It shouldn't change
But
it.
it's,
27,
yeah, if,
It looks like one TK at Catalino and one TK at Aliso.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
just what we have, right?
yeah, that's what I would imagine.
So just also to clarify, Michelle, you indicated, does that mean you just want us to abide by our current board policy and leave the other grade levels as is and not entertain having all transfers denied? You just want to leave it as is per board policy
So,
related to TK?
I'm sorry.
Well, I think that's a whole different topic.
We're talking about TK,
But-
right?
For,
So you're talking about inter-district transfers for TK. So Aliso wanting to go to Catalino, Catalino wanting to go to Summerlin. Okay.
And it's clear to us because of the new street directory, it just becomes unclear with a handful where we have staff requests, and our policy and adopted board policy allows for that flexibility for staff members, and then if they're siblings or unusual circumstances. So we took care of all of the intras with the new street directory. There were still these outliers out there, and you had directed us to use discretion was the wording.
So, just my own thoughts on it is, at this point, I would recommend we don't mess with staffing at any given school right now. So whatever class size it is, so that we're not moving FTEs around, would be my
Yeah.
suggestion.
any intra-district transfer should not trigger the need for increased staffing.
Yes. Well said.
Yes, and I think that's where we are with respect to the TKs that are the youngest TKs, and those are indicated in your packet confidentially with the blue shading. Those will require follow-up conversations then with families, because now that and President Schaefer, you read the policy there, and it does say with board approval. So pending the outcome of your motion and the action that you take tonight, we would then contact the families and delay admittance.
Well, again, they should never have been allowed to be admitted because we have not adopted a board policy that takes into consideration this amendment. So we would have been acting outside of our own policy by admitting these students.
Correct.
So I would say, yes, we need to contact them as soon as possible and let them know that they will have to continue wherever they are now.
So personally, I always thought that this law from the state regarding transitional kindergarten was ridiculous to begin with. And I really never understood their thinking for those 3 months. You're basically taking the kids who are then going to be your oldest kindergartners and you're
Right.
giving them transitional kindergarten.
I can explain it since that's my world. It was a compromise. Instead of having universal preschool, it was titled TK as kind of a warm-up. And then the governor intended to have the early education block grant passed, which would have then kind of combined TK and state preschool. And that did not
Right.
end up happening. And so now we're stuck with
Right.
this weird,
And I always
Great.
envisioned this happening.
Yeah.
And
But we wouldn't have gotten the block grant anyhow because we're basic aid?
Well, we have a state preschool contract, so we would have been held harmless, so that would have continued. But,
Which is, it has an
Yeah.
encroachment anyhow.
yes.
Yes, so it would have
That's
cost
true.
us,
Yeah.
it would have been an
It really
encroachment.
works for LCFF.
Yeah,
So sadly,
Everything works for
it's an
LCFF.
awkward situation now, and I think it's one that was ridiculous that the state created. Honestly, I do, and I saw it coming when the law first came in. But sitting here as the board of Carpenter Unified, I don't see that we have the money to expand this program now.
I agree.
So,
okay.
Is there a motion?
So I don't think we need a motion.
Oh.
Do we?
Because we
It was just a review.
We're
it's for
You have a discussion action item in front of you. Yes.
So I will.
Okay, so we need a motion.
I will make a motion. I'm going to move that transitional kindergarten remain consistent with board policy, applying only to the September through December children, and that any intra-district transfers do not trigger an increase in staffing.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Board communications. Alicia.
Well, no, just want to say everyone have a great summer and be kind to others, please.
Very good.
Cindy, we'll miss you. Learn so much from you. Thank you for your presentation tonight, and come back and see us again. I'm sure.
I have two things, actually. One, yes, Cindy, thank you for all that you have done, and you've really kept us grounded. Even with all our big dreams, you keep bringing us back to reality. And, please watch us on TV, on Channel 21, and then text us and say, don't forget this, because we rely on you so much. So thank you, and the best of luck to you. I am going to take some extra minutes because I have prepared a written comment that I would like to read. I would like to take this opportunity to comment on the information that was presented by the cause president in the latest cause advisory. In the notification that went out to not only unit members of Carpinteria Unified, but also was CC to the Coastal View News, there are some clarifications that I must address. I'm speaking as a sole board member. The board has not publicly addressed any of these concerns because we have honored the Roberts Rules of Order under the Brown Act. The statement that was emailed out by cause indicated that during our impasse process, the school board rejected the mediation proposal presented to us. To quote Jay Hotchner, the cause president, he states in the advisory, quote, once again, the CUSD school board has ignored the best advice provided by the financial consultants and administrators they have hired and paid to provide them fiscal guidance. And they call this responsible fiscal stewardship. As a result, our efforts to resolve impasse have failed. But this time, the obstruction and responsibility for this entrenched impasse process couldn't be more clear. As they claim to represent the community, the school board stands alone in their bargaining posture, end quote. I would like to address these statements directly. First, the district team that met with the mediators were given two proposals to consider. While I want to give details of each of these proposals, I am respecting that discussing confidential content of those meetings is not an option. However, just to be clear, both proposals were offered for the same amount of increase to staff salaries. Again, to be clear, that this proposal did not affect management. The administration is not included in the salary increases. For clarity, as this was not mentioned to unit members nor the public, the Board of Trustees agreed to the first offer by the mediator that would have given the increase but allowed for a contingency clause. The cause team rejected that offer. The mediator then offered the second proposal for the same exact increase amount, but with the bargaining agreement terminating in June of 2017. At this time, the board declined that offer because it would not give us enough time to make the adjustments needed to keep the budget balanced. So when the board is accused of not being willing to consider salary increases to our employees, those accusations are blatantly false. Secondly, I would like to address the cause statement that we are not providing responsible fiscal stewardship. I'm going to break down finance down to the school finance down to the simplest terms I can, because I'm not Cindy, so I can't explain it like Cindy. There is ongoing revenue and there is one-time revenue. There are ongoing expenses and there are one-time expenses. Salaries and benefits are ongoing expenses and must be paid for out of ongoing revenue. One-time money is not, nor ever has been, nor will be used for ongoing expenses. Although our ongoing revenue has fluctuated up and down over the years, our ongoing expenses have continued to rise. Each and every year, staff moves up on the salary schedule through step increases. After 1 year of service, they continue to get an increase every year until they reach longevity status. At that point, they get additional career incentives for reaching certain benchmarks. Staff also have the opportunity to get additional increases based on their professional growth. This opportunity is entirely in the hands of the employee, and salary increases are made when they complete those goals. The governance team encourages longevity and professional development in the staff, as we know that this only benefits the students. Currently, and I want to stress this, approximately 85% of our overall budget currently goes to salaries and benefits for staff. That leaves only 15% for other direct services to students. The second fact of school finance that the public needs to know is that we are mandated by law to keep a certain minimum reserve balance of 3% in our budget. This minimum of 3% is required by us in order to have our budget certified as sound by the county and the state. That 3% must be shown 3 years out, as was demonstrated earlier tonight. So the budget that we are adopting for 2016-2017 directly affects our budget approval for 2018-2019. It is not year to year, but a multi-year budget plan. This is also to ensure that if there are any unanticipated budget impacts, such as a recession, a lawsuit, staff leaves, facility emergencies, that we have enough to reserve to cover payroll and keep the lights on. This board is committed to following the law set for us and ensuring that direct cuts will not affect the students, if at all possible. If that is not responsible fiscal stewardship, then I don't know what is. My final comments tonight on this subject are this. The school board members sitting up here tonight are highly educated, highly experienced individuals. We are successful business leaders, successful executives of nonprofits, successful professionals in our respective fields, and trained educators. Every single one of us has or currently has children that are connected to the Carpinteria Unified School District. This work is personal to us. We volunteer our time away from our families and friends without compensation of any kind to lend our expertise and experience to this district because we believe the school district is the heart and soul of this community. For cause members to comment that we don't care about the staff or we are not competent in our role is offensive and insulting. Because this work is so personal to us, we have dedicated countless hours to trying to solve the challenges that we face. I find the tone and rhetoric of some members non-productive and a deliberate undermining of our best intentions. Of everyone at the negotiating table, board members are the only ones that do not have financial gain in the outcome. We serve to advocate for the students and ensure that they are provided with the highest quality educational experience that we can give them. To us, it is all about the students. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Michelle. Very well said.
I agree.
Do you have anything, Terry?
So I don't have anything to add, except again, Cindy, thank you. I've already said my piece to you, but, and happy 4th to everyone.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Thank you, Cindy. We're going to miss you. All right. So we're going to adjourn back into closed session. We'll report out afterwards.